I just wanted to ask you today
Yeah.
about. I had sent you a book some time ago, an e-book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran,
Yeah.
many months ago. I mean, actually, it's about, I think, enlightened person
Yeah.
who's leaving the shores of a city, and the people of the city are in deep despair and in grief on seeing this wise man leave the shores of the city. So they ask him questions before he leaves.
Yeah.
Many questions, and that book is about many questions and his answers running on the chapters. In the same way, I wanted to ask you today about
I
the
don't know if
mystery.
I read it though.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just giving a prelude to the question today.
Okay.
That today was just as I was just traveling on the road, I was just seeing somebody on the bike, and now when we understand intellectually, these are all biological robots being run by a universal software. There's an echo, right?
Yeah.
1 second, I'll just try to. Is the echo coming from my end?
Mhm.
I don't know if I read it though.
Yeah. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, sorry, there was another window which was opening. So I wanted to ask you about this mystery of this entire universe, this cosmos, as to how is it happening?
Huh?
Rather than ask for solutions to problems,
Yeah.
your teaching is this is it, baby.
Yeah.
So I want you to talk about the this is it.
Yeah.
How is it happening? This mystery.
It's spontaneously arising from that mysterious force. So everything is a reflection of that mysterious force.
Can you talk to us about that X force?
No, because we can't look at it from inside the dream, but yet everything inside the dream is it.
Yeah, but people like us are inside the dream, but you're out of it. That's why I'm asking you. You are whatever out of the dream, whereas we are in the dream. So it's
What do you imagine being outside of the dream is?
trying to understand the mystery more. As I've been frequently asking you, we are like sort of left in this universe on a very distant planet near a sun with, like made up of 100 trillion cells, each cell having 100 trillion atoms, and each firing itself automatically, weaving a cosmic web of a human life. And we are left at the mercy of this cosmos, except for enlightened persons who give us a glimpse of what's happening. We inside the dream can't understand it. Can you enlighten us as to what this mystery is about?
I just had a sense when you were speaking, Ilangho, of the loneliness that you feel.
Me?
Yeah. Like you feel lonely. Not lonely like as in you don't have friends, but loneliness as in what comes up for you a lot of the moment is a sense of feeling alone in society.
Yeah.
You can't make connection.
Yeah.
So this is where we need to start, because as soon as you start to describe this, you do it before, like we're this in this massive universe of the sun, and as soon as you start saying that, I get the feeling that what you're saying is I feel very small in comparison to this very big world. Like,
isn't it a fact?
Huh?
Isn't the human being minuscule and compared to the gigantic universe?
Well,
and you no?
Depends how you look at it. One way, yes, and in one way, no. The human being is an entire universe.
That's for you.
But let's go back to the feeling of feeling alone. Where do you feel that in your body?
You're putting words into my mouth.
Or do you feel aloneness in the body?
No.
So describe to me how your body feels now.
Fine. Seriously, I'm feeling fine.
You're feeling fine.
After the weekend, I'm feeling seriously, yeah.
Okay, will you just let me spontaneously speak? I'm just going to close my eyes. And this is, just so everyone knows, this isn't necessarily related to Ilangho. There's somebody else in the room here, and there's a whole people out there watching. So this energy wants to speak about loneliness.
So I should also close my eyes.
Oh, no, you can look at me or close your eyes, whichever you like. But I just have to do that for a second. I might open them again in a minute. So when I say spontaneously speak, I mean as in like what I'm trying to say that I'm doing is that I'm not answering a direct question from Ilangho. I'm just going to say stuff. So prior to my awakening in Bali, just prior, and I think we've spoken about this before, but it's going to come again. There was a lot of things that I had to give up, and I think being a female form in this society, we tend to have been conditioned in a way where being by yourself in a strange country or being totally alone isn't okay. It's the same with a guy, but maybe there's more of conditioning to be an adventurer as a guy. But as a woman, we're always taught very unconsciously and very subtly that this is a bad thing in some way. And it's very genetic and it's passed on to us so subtly that we're always taught that we need to be supported, that we're not really totally capable of looking after ourselves by ourselves. So and this isn't true, this is all storyland and it's not true at all, but when I was in Bali, I felt this immense loneliness, like there was nobody in the world that I could relate to. There was, I was totally out of my culture, my society. I had no friends which I could speak to because in my mind I saw all my old friends as wouldn't even be able to comprehend what I was talking about. They weren't interested in non-duality, and anything I said to them would just go into their story and I just wasn't interested. So I was in Bali by myself, and the only person that knew I was in Bali was my ex-boyfriend. Nobody else knew. I could die in the middle of the street and no one would have known anything, and I didn't even believe that anyone really cared. Like my ex-boyfriend had asked me to leave, and my parents, I don't know, I didn't think they cared or not cared, but I think that they wanted me to be a particular way, and therefore there was a lot of things that I just didn't tell them. So I felt so alone there. You can't believe how alone and anonymous I felt. Until you do that, until you totally leave everything, you've got nowhere to go back home. When I was in Bali, I had nowhere to go. I couldn't go to my parents, they didn't approve of my life. I had no money, I had no job, I had no place that I could go to and call mine. I'd been in Australia for over 3 years and that had become my home, and now from that I had to leave. I didn't have that anymore. So I was in Bali with no position. No position. There was nothing I could go to for refuge. There was no one I could speak to that I believed had any credit. The only thing I had was this body and a small rucksack of stuff and $3,000, which is quite a lot. I think it was $3,000, I forget now, but it's quite a lot and it's also not. And I decided just to spend all the money on exactly what I felt like doing. So I was burning this money and I had no idea where my next income would come from, where my next home would be. I just burnt it. I was buying myself massages, really beautiful meals, doing all these different yoga classes. I was staying in a nice hotel. I went for pamperings, for facials, everything. I just spent it on clothes. Not that I was really interested in clothes, but mostly therapies and things I was spending it on, and spas. They had a spa there, a really beautiful spa. And it's not that cheap, Bali. It's not like India. It's quite westernized prices because of Australia. And I was laying in my room, And I was just laying there, resting the attention on my absolute aloneness. I felt so completely invisible in this world, this huge world, and nobody knew about me. Nobody cared about me. I had nothing. I was a no one. And then when I looked out of the window, I was staying in this like bamboo hut, this beautiful bamboo hut. There was I don't know what you call them, a coconut tree. I don't know, palm tree was brushing against my window, and the sun was kind of flickering off it into my room. As it moved, it was creating shade and light and shade and light. And it was just blowing in the wind ever so gently. And I had the thought, but it was more of a sensation, that I wasn't alone. There was this tree there. And I looked at the tree, and it began to feel so close to me. And then I looked at the window that was half open, and the window felt so incredibly close to me. And when I dropped all my thoughts and ideas, and that energy began to drop, I looked around the room, and I could see so clearly that I'd never been alone. I'd only been alone when I was imagining myself as a subject, as an object which was energetical. And this movement of the tree was so enticing and trancing. It was like it was touching me. And I was so convinced that I was totally alone in Bali, with no support, no help, that I was just about to fall into disaster homeless land with nothing. In one way I was thinking that. This is prior to the awakening, so it was flip-flopping. And then this other side felt so much company from the movements of a leaf of a tree. More company than I'd ever felt in humans. It was like there was everything I looked for. There was that intimacy. And I think this was a few days before that big explosion happened, but it was beginning to happen. I can't remember the distance, but I just never remember that movement of the tree in the light. So you have this imagination of this big wide world out there, and it makes Ilangho feel incredibly small. But have you ever been alone? Have you ever really been alone without imagining you? If you forget about you, have you ever been singular and separate? Well, I think that's all. That's enough for the session today. That was a lovely conversation, Ilangho. I know you didn't say much, but it was beautiful energy. Thank you. Bye, Ilangho.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Thanks for calling.
Thanks.